appreciate your presence today for setting aside everything you have to do and then joining us on today's podcast. I'd like to welcome you again. You know, as the name implies, it's Better Head Podcast. And what we do here is we share health information, especially the aspect of nutrition, that will help people live a better and healthier life by the grace of God. Last week, we did a brief takeaway. And like I shared last week, that every week I'm going to be giving us a tip. That's a health tip that we'll practice. And I made reference to the fact that most of my clients, you give them something to practice, and maybe 10 points, do this, do that, do that. You know, they get tired. And it happens to each and every one of us. Don't eat this, exercise, sun, everything. Discover that it becomes cumbersome. So because of that, I'm going to be giving one a week. And then last week, we did the breath exercise. I know that some people didn't really understand this, so I'm going to just explain it today. When I explain it, we'll carry from there. I'll explain it, and then I will now go over to what I want to share with us as our takeaway for today. Like I mentioned, the breath exercise is like you breathe in, out, but we're going to do it in a different way. You're breathing in, so you just say 4, 7, 8. 4, 7, 8. And let's take them as seconds, okay? So you breathe in at the count of 4. Let's 4 seconds. Instead of at once, you just do it gradually until you feel your lungs, okay? So that's what you're going to do. You breathe in gradually at 4 seconds. Then you now hold that breath for 7 seconds, okay? You hold it for 7 seconds. You can count in your head 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you now release. Instead of releasing like that, you release from your mouth. And then release from your mouth, you make some hum sound to shake, some of the cells around the nostril. And the essence of that is there are cells that produce a gas called nitric oxide. And that nitric oxide can relax the blood vessels and help with high blood pressure. I mentioned that, and when you do this consistently, we have seen it. So, like I said, you breathe in at the count of 4 gradually, like that. Then you hold it for 7 seconds, and then you breathe out through your mouth, 8 seconds. So you do that, that's one cycle. So you do it repeatedly, say 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times, as much as you can. So maybe you do 10 times in the morning, in the afternoon you do 10 times, in the evening you do 10 times. And that's for the day. And that is going to help you, trust me, on that. And then we'll go over to what we're going to take home for today. It's not exercise, but it's just something we can be practicing on a daily basis. And I have been doing it for maybe 1.5 years or so, or 2 years. And that is sun exposure. A lot of us don't do that. And when I started it was when I discovered that a lot of people have vitamin D deficiency. And like I mentioned the last time, about 70%, I gave you data, 70% of people that come are really deficient. Another 25% are insufficient. And then it's just perhaps 5% that made that. And discovered that some of the 5% maybe were even taking vitamin D supplements. So that is what happens. So because of that, I started sun exposure. It's very important. It's not only vitamin D. I know later on we're going to talk about the sun, and you're going to see a lot of reasons why you need to expose yourself to the sun. So one of the reasons is vitamin D. And let me tell you some things about that. vitamin D in the morning. Not only vitamin D, you get nitric oxide, that same gas I mentioned that can relax blood vessels. And also it helps to reset cortisol. Cortisol is hormones that come in for fight or flight. It goes low when you're sleeping. If it's high when you're sleeping, you always awake. You always wake up in the night. But if it goes low in the morning, when you expose yourself to the sun, it resets the receptor and then now start going hard. It's telling your body that you are awake. And that is very important. And there are a couple of other things, but let me just focus on the vitamin D. There are two things to note. One, if your shadow is taller than you are not making vitamin D. Let's say 7, 8 a.m., the sun is already bright, and then your shadow is taller than you. You are not making vitamin D. Either your shadow is at your height or shorter than you. That is when you make vitamin D. And that is around 9, 10 a.m. to around 3 p.m. And that is what research has shown. And then another thing there is, if you are covered, especially by a glass, maybe you're in the car, you're winding up, you are home. That's what I was doing before, because my bed is just facing the east. So when the sun is rising, it's hitting me there. But I now discovered that when you are covered or there's a glass interface, you are not going to be making vitamin D. Then the third thing I wanted to mention is one of the ways you can support us is to visit our page, YouTube. It's already on now. We have just one video. A couple of videos will be coming in. Apart from what we are recording live, other videos will be coming in that I'll be putting in. So if you can subscribe and then you hit the notification bell, anytime we post in a video, you're going to be notified, and we'll really appreciate that. So this video also will be uploaded soon. So and another thing I want to mention is the link for today is permanent link. So that is the link we'll be using going forward. So I want to just do a little recap for what we did last week. And if we're not here last week, we may do well to just visit our YouTube channel and then look at what we considered last week, and so that you will have a flow to what we're looking at today. Just briefly, last week we were talking about the fact that your real age is not your birthday age. That's the main title. And then we defined chronological age as the age of your birthday, how long you have lived, and then biological age as the age of your cells, your internal organs, the wear and tear that has happened to your organs, your systems, and your cells. That is what your biological age represents. And so, we made a statement that it's your biological age that will actually determine when you die. I know people might die, maybe accidents or maybe other things. We're not talking about that, but we're looking at you just age and you die. It's that biological age that will determine when you and I will die. It's as simple as that. And then we went to look at why some people think they are healthy but they are not. I considered 3 things there. I won't have to take our time so much to be going over. Just go to page and then we'll listen to it. So I want to begin to share my screen now, and then we'll go into today's home proper, which is part 2 of what we began discussing. Okay. I believe you can all see my slide. I want to start now so that we'll have ample time for questions. Okay, so I showed you this picture last week. I designed this just to demonstrate what it is that we're discussing. By biological age, the way we are aging, it's like we're in a vehicle, or it's a vehicle that is moving downhill. Let me use it that way. A vehicle that is moving downhill. And there are things about this vehicle that is moving downhill that no matter what you think or what you believe, you are all traveling on that road, whether you know it or not, or whether you like it or not. It's as simple as that. And that trip that we're all involved in is called aging. And the end of that trip is death, because each and every one of us is going to die. No matter what you think, no matter what you feel, whether you like it or not, time will come, we age and we die. And then the road is not straightforward. If you look at this, you can see it's kind of snaky, windy, snaky. It's not straightforward. So it means you travel at different speeds. You might go, maybe perhaps some things you do, lifestyle changes and all that, to not slow down your own progress, or it will accelerate it. And we go at different speeds. There are three ways actually you can travel. One is, if, like we're saying, is a car, and then you turn on the ignition, the engine is on. Even if you don't do anything, the car is going to descend. It's as simple as that. And then another thing you can do is, the car is descending, you now match the accelerator. What happens? The car will just speed up. And what is going to result? You're going to crash early. You crash very soon. That is the way it is also with aging. There are things that will accelerate our biological age. And then there are also things that can decelerate this. It's like matching the brake. So when you match the brake, you're going to decelerate. When you decelerate, you're not going to crash soon. So we're now going to consider some of the things that make us accelerate or decelerate. Number one is sugar. This is basically what I'm doing is an overview. It's an overview. I'm just going to rush through each of them. If I want to talk about sugar, I might even take 3 sessions or 4 sessions to talk about sugar, because I'll tell you how sugar, we started eating sugar, how we started, from one country to another, how each country that eats sugar, after 3 years, diabetes and other chronic diseases will begin to increase. So, I'll show you what sugar is doing in our bodies, how it's destroying the life of our children, a lot of things to share about sugar. But the only thing I just want to bring out here is there are many organizations, both in America, around the world, that push 24 grams of sugar, which is like 6 teaspoons. A teaspoon is 4 grams, as the daily sugar limit we should consume as individuals to be healthy. That is for children and for women. For men, maybe around 32, which is about 7-8 teaspoons. But a bottle of Coca-Cola, 33 cl, is already a teaspoon of sugar. Imagine 50 cl. So with that, you're already exceeding your daily limit. And I want to share that it's toxic. I don't know how to explain that so much today, because I will go into depths that you will understand. When we do a deep dive, you will understand what I mean by that. And then sugar is made up of 2 molecules. I think I shared it last week. There's glucose, there's fructose. Every cell on Earth, both plants, animals, we all use glucose. But when it's too high, it becomes problematic. However, no cell uses fructose. None. Fructose is handled like alcohol by the body. The body handles fructose like alcohol. So it just gets into the liver, and then maybe it's able to do some conversions for you to use some for energy. And then the remaining one enters a process they call de novo lipogenesis. That's fat making. Lipo is liquid. Genesis, beginning, so it makes fat in the liver. So that's how dangerous it is. The second thing there is trans fat. Trans fat actually is the devil's incarnate. It's the single worst thing you can put in your mouth. And it's a process of dehydration of oils, partial dehydration of oils that produce trans fat. And we'll see them in margarine, in cookies, in biscuits, in all those things. So when we're consuming these things, we're actually consuming trans fats. And there are some studies that have shown that when you heat oil to smoking temperature, you overheat oil or you reuse oil. Some of us will fry with oil. And then next week we'll fry again with the same oil. We'll fry again. The oil is even tired. So when you do that, you are creating a lot of trans fat for yourself. So a lot of trans fats now are actually created in our kitchen. And in America has been banned, but it's a lot of products that they bring to Nigeria, they have trans fat. I've considered a couple of them. When we discuss trans fat, I will show you how they even hide trans fat in labels. If you don't understand it, you discover that you miss it big time. There's trans fat you think is not there. Then another thing is vegetable oil. These are the things that will accelerate, press that accelerator on the biological aging we mentioned. And I know some of you are taken aback with this vegetable oil, and that is true. Vegetable oils, we know them, we know the names now, the canola oil. And the funny thing about vegetable oil? The vegetables don't produce oil, they actually seed oils. So it's a misnomer, it's just marketing gimmick to catch people's attention. And when we do that, I will do a deep dive. I will tell you how we started eating vegetable oil. It entered the human diet, and what it can do, and how they have lied about some research that were done before about this vegetable oil. It's man-made. There are a lot of chemical toxins inside that can destroy. And then we'll have refined carbohydrates and flour. I know some of you will say, what are you talking about? What about bread? What about that? Well, I have mentioned it last week that when you eat those things, you just minimize bread, cakes, and all that make from refined flour. And one of the issues with refined flour now is you might say, okay, Jesus ate bread many years ago. Yes, he did. But the bread he ate then is not the bread we're eating now. Then what happens is a seed has a coat. Okay, you have the coat, you have in between, you have the endosperm, and inside you have the embryo. The coat is where you have the fiber. The middle part, which is the endosperm, is just the flour that is extracted. And the embryo is where you have the vitamins and minerals. What they do is they take out the coat, they take out the embryo, and they give you just flour. And you know what that is. So you're just eating empty thing without fiber and without nutrients. And why do they do that? They remove these things because of shelf life. If you grind these things together, you discover that it will not last long. And there's another thing, the way we grind them. There's a scripture, I think Isaiah 28:20. I quickly just smuggled this one in. When God was saying that, he has given the farmer wisdom, in terms of threshing and all that. But he said, the bread for wheat, you crush it, you don't pulverize it. It means you don't grind it into powder. That's what we do. We make it into fine flour. And when you eat it, your blood sugar will rise. And then the other thing is wheat and oats. I mentioned it last week a little bit, how a lot of studies have pointed the fact that glyphosate, which is herbicide that is used in farming, a lot of them have toxic levels of them. That's why I don't recommend them. I mentioned also that the wheat we eat now wasn't the wheat that they ate during the time of Moses in the Bible and other times. It was created in 1960 in Mexico. They actually didn't have a bad intention. They had a good intention. They wanted to solve the hunger problem in the world, and then created a wheat that was dwarf. And before, wheat grows up to 7 feet and all that. Now, 2-3 feet, and then the production capacity is about 6 times what it produced before. But at the same time, you're now producing more toxins like gluten, which is a protein in wheat, and a lot of people react. About 30% of people that eat it causes celiac disease, kind of disease, gastrointestinal disease, where it damages the intestinal lining, and then it becomes a problem for the person. And also, I told you, like diabetes, that's the first thing I asked them to stop eating. Because, for example, diabetes, there are about 17 nutrients that are important in that process of glucose release and then absorption. About 17 nutrients, vitamins and minerals. And a lot of minerals are bound by a product in wheat called amylopectin. So when it binds it, so you'll be eating the wheat, it's binding all the minerals in other foods you're eating. And then before you know, you have deficiency, and it will complicate issues. And then the other thing is GMOs. This is like the popular thing now. GMOs is not what I would recommend for anyone now. And I'm going to, when I talk about them, I will give you details of how we cannot trust those people. If someone has invested about $2.8 billion in a particular country, he wants a return. He doesn't like you. He doesn't like your face. It's as simple as that. We know their antecedents. We know their history. We know how they do things. So because of that, you cannot trust them. Whatever they are telling you now, you can't trust them. I have seen so many studies where they manipulated data, and we got to know after 50 years, after 55 years. That's when people got to know. And that is bad. So if you love yourself, you should just stay away from it. I'll come back to you later. Not today though. And then what about this? I say red meat, coconut oil, palm oil, olive oil. This I mentioned there, they have high saturated fats. You know, they have told you don't eat saturated fat. When you eat a lot of saturated fat, it has cholesterol, and then you're going to have heart disease and all that. You have believed that for 55 years. Eating low cholesterol. You have believed in 1987 they introduced cholesterol lowering medicine. You have been taking it, yet heart attack or heart disease rather is still #1 killer worldwide. Do you believe that? I'll come to that and I'll show you all the life, how they started and all that. That's in the future. So, but today we'll just stick to what we're doing. So, having looked or considered the ones that will accelerate this age, how do we decelerate it in the context of food? Taking food as our daily medicine. What I'm saying, number one is eat whole, minimally processed food, whole food. Our great-great-grandparents, that's what they ate. And the way I will explain it now, like I said, in the future we'll come back, is what you're eating, how far away is it from the soil? How far away is it from nature? That is what you consider. If it's too far from the soil, let me put it that way. Because for example now, Gary, you don't eat it that way. They process it a little. But when they overprocess and you don't recognize that it's Gary, and then they now put 50 other ingredients inside, some of them you cannot even mention. Just leave it alone. And that is what happens with sugar. Because there are a lot of names that sugar, I will show it to you when I talk about sugar. You can have up to 30, 40, 50 different names for sugar in label. So you might be eating sugar, you don't know you're eating sugar. So basically, like we've said, this is the summary. When you eat bad food, like we've mentioned, it's going to accelerate your aging, going to accelerate, and we give a relationship between aging and chronic diseases. It's going to accelerate it. But when you eat the foods that are whole and not far away from the soil, you're going to see a tremendous change in your health. This is just a research that was done in Clinical Nutrition 2024. I like to prove what I say, comparing junk and then whole food. See that junk accelerated aging, whole foods decelerated. And then this is one that is actually critical. I'll just mention it quickly. This is a study. It's not only about food. I have to mention that. Men between 50 and 72 years old, they gave them whole foods, you know, they improve their sleep, exercise, and then stress care. And just in 8 weeks, they were able to reverse their aging. They gained 3 years. So let's assume they were 60 years, as in their biological age is 60 years, and they did it in 8 weeks, it decreased to 57 years. That is tremendous. And that is what we are discussing. If you put all these things together, they are like synergistic. You don't just take only one and run away with it. If you take only one and run, you're not going to get the result. You're going to put it together as a whole. And this is the reference. The reference is what I put here. So you can, if you want to look at it yourself. So the next thing we want to look at is pollution. I know pollution is what people do not even know or consider as potential risk for aging and for diseases. Basically, pollution ages us fast. And air pollution accelerates biological aging, like I've mentioned. Pollution increases our risk of chronic disease and it silently damages our cells. So, I want to share some things that many of us don't know. around the world, there's what they call PM 2.5. PM is particulate matter 2.5. So that particulate matter is not just only one thing, it's a combination of a couple of things. You know, you have nitrogen compounds, you have compounds from dust, you have compounds from the exhaust fumes, from generator and all that. Those are the things that make up the particulate matter. And they usually measure it in different countries. In our own country, it's high. And in cities, I have researched Lagos, Benin, Abuja, Port Harcourt. And some of us will just think that Lagos and maybe Port Harcourt will be the highest. Funny enough, in some of the data I will show you, Benin was even higher. Abuja, followed by Abuja, before Lagos. And I think Ogbomoso was also in that data. So you can see how it is. Then, the very critical thing is that this pollution has been shown in Nigeria to shorten our lifespan. Imagine our life expectancy is about 53, 54, 55, depending on whether you're a man or a woman. A woman will have a higher one, has a higher one than a man. That's showing that it's taking away 2% of our expectancy. That is incredible. So imagine that. So it means if we're able to control this PM 2.5, we're going to gain 2% of our life expectancy. And like I've mentioned, sources are transport, generator, and the industry. We know a lot of industries where you have some of these issues there. Transport, for example, now, you see a situation where you go out and there is a lot of traffic. You are stuck in traffic, is it not? So we're going to be releasing a lot of this. And when we release a lot of this, it's going to complicate the whole thing. And this PM 2.5 enters the bloodstream and causes disease. And then health risk include heart disease, cancer, and stroke. These have been documented. And this Lagos, it costs Lagos about 2.1% of GDP. You see, that's incredible. So I'll just leave this and then go ahead. This is some of the data I was talking about. If you look closely, there are two graphs down. The one on the left is 2.5, PM 2.5. There's actually 10 as well. That 2.5, you can see Benin, Abuja, Lagos, and all that. This is from this particular journal that is on top, so you can see. And then look at the next graph. On your right hand, you see these are representative of deaths, as in the number of deaths that you see every year. That is what you have on the right hand side. So this number of deaths, imagine having about 15,000 total mortality, 15,000 deaths every year. And then children is about 7,000 plus. So you can see how bad this PM 2.5 is. And then we'll look at other toxins. I believe most of us are not too familiar with some of these toxins as well. There's what they call mycotoxins. These mycotoxins are from fungi, So mycotoxins are toxins from fungi. Aflatoxin is an example. And this contaminates certain foods, especially cereals like corn, like groundnut. As a matter of fact, it's shown that over 95% of the groundnut you find is contaminated with this toxin. And what are we supposed to do about that? It means you have to be careful about the source of the groundnut that you eat. So heavy metals, we know heavy metals like lead, mercury, we have cadmium, and all that. These are heavy metals that actually pollute both food and the atmosphere. You know, a lot of paints were made from lead, and it causes issues. And you see a lot of companies that do printing, their staff are exposed to a lot of heavy metals. And that is a big issue for them. If you work in those countries for a very long time, it's going to complicate your health for you if maybe there are other things that add to it, you're not sleeping well and all that. Then heavy metals in imported rice. Sometimes we think, oh, rice from America is super good and the one from other places are not. And I'm here to disappoint you, to burst your bubble, that the one from America, as a matter of fact, has been shown that a lot of them have heavy metals. And that is a big issue right there. In fact, the ones from Thailand and the one from India are actually better based on this. You can even use your Google or anything and look at it. So, but what do you do? How do you overcome this? If you cook rice and you have rice to, let's say you have a pot and the rice is at 20% level, that's 1/5 level of that pot. What you do is add water like 3-4 times the level of that rice. Let's say just a little, let's say 80% of the pot level. If the pot you divide into 10, 2 parts of it is occupied by the rice, add water up to 8 parts. And what happens when you cook, you filter. That's how you're able to get rid of some of this. And then we look at our agriculture and farming in Nigeria. A lot of pesticides are used, a lot of them. And pesticides, number one, what they do is they don't just vanish. They are washed down. Both pesticides and herbicides, they are washed down. When they are washed down, you have the soil microbiome. That is the bacteria, the fungi, the viruses in the soil. And they play a part. The role they play is, if God has put in natural minerals in the soil, the selenium, all the zinc, all the molybdenum, plants don't make them. Nobody makes them. They are there in the soil. And they are there in their metallic form. And for them to be converted from the metallic form to the form which the plant can take, which is the colloidal form, you need those fungi and the bacteria and all that. When all these pesticides destroy them, what happens? It becomes an issue for us. The plant is not able to get enough of it. We consume the plant, we're not able to get. Animals don't get enough from the plants. We consume animals, we're not able to get enough. That's one of the things. And a lot of them also for preservation. A lot of Nigerians use this to preserve, like beans. I believe some of us have bought beans that smell like kerosene or smell like anything. And that's not really good. And if you buy something like that and you're smelling it, and okay, you still want to, maybe because of forms, you still want to eat it, what you do, I learned this one from a friend of mine, it might be on this call, Professor, University of Benin, that you just take out the back of the bean. So it means you can only use the beans to cook moi moi. Toxic mercury and hydroquinone in skincare, women in Nigeria is about, they want to tone, they want to glow, they want to light. Everything is about lighting. Everything is about that. And when that happens, they are consuming a lot of this mercury and a lot of hydroquinone in these skincare products. And then personal care products like toothpaste. I know this one might surprise you. Just go to your kitchen, maybe after this podcast, look at the dishwasher you have. Some of them called lemon something. I don't want to mention them. We all know them. Just look at that dishwasher. Look at the formula at the back. You see that is the same thing that you have in your toothpaste. And it's quite funny. Sodium lauryl sulfate. That is the main ingredient. You have also cocoa betaine. I've produced all these things before. And then sometimes you have salt, sodium chloride, which they use as thickener. Okay? So imagine something. Can you use that, your dishwasher, to brush your mouth? You might not. These things are not harmful on the short term, but on the long run, they are harmful. Like some of the heavy metals I mentioned, they can stay in your system for 30, 40 years. They'll be accumulating. And like all those lead and all that, they will accumulate until it gets to a level, and then you become sick and you're wondering what is happening. So that is what it is about toothpaste. And another thing I want to mention about toothpaste briefly is that most toothpaste have a fluoride. I don't use fluoride toothpaste again. Fluoride has antibacterial property. And then I don't have time to tell you the story of how fluoride was smuggled into the system by bribery, which food industry was responsible with the National Dental, whatever, of America around 1981, because they discovered that all this periodontal disease, dental as in tooth decay, was happening, and it was linked to sugar. And then coincidentally, researchers were coming up with solution, and they discovered that fluoride can help to 50%, not 100%. Fluoride can help up to just 50%. Now, what did they do? They have to divert attention. These sugar industries went and then, did their PR, divert attention from sugar to fluoride, to the use of fluoride. No, that fluoride is toxic. It can poison your thyroid and, a couple of other things. And apart from that, fluoride now, I will now add toothpaste that has antibacterial properties. There are some adverts you see. I won't mention any name. You see toothpaste, it has antibacterial property, and then somebody will now feel, oh, your breath is nice. That is a major issue, because what happens is there is a pathway you're going to destroy completely. Why do we eat vegetables? Green leafy vegetables like pumpkin leaves. The reason we eat it, there are two things: polyphenols, and for a gas that can be produced from there called nitric oxide. And that gas, it goes through a process. Those green leafy vegetables, they have something they call nitrate. When you're chewing it, at the crypt of your tongue, at the back of the tongue, you have some bacteria that live there, and they produce an enzyme that breaks that nitrate down. And then you swallow it to the stomach. Acid will now break it and convert it to that nitric oxide, the gas. That gas can relax blood vessels. It can kill the bacteria that causes ulcer. It can kill other bacteria. That is why God put it there. But when you use this kind of antibacterial toothpaste, or the one that has fluoride, to kill those, and it's not overnight, it happens consistently. And when I discuss this, I will show you even the relationship between using mouthwash and high blood pressure. Some research that prove that when you use mouthwash consistently, high blood pressure will come. These are not what people invent. Okay, looking at the way forward from these toxins, public awareness, just like we are saying now, you are learning, I believe you've learned one or two things. You know how to minimize certain things. If you can now avoid them immediately, you just minimize. And then secondly, you know how to take some whole foods like vegetables that have polyphenols, flavor, and these have antioxidant properties, and also antioxidant supplements. And then when we get to supplements, you know that you need some of this things. So because these heavy metals and these toxins, what they do is they act as oxidants. Oxidants are like things that cause oxidation. They are unstable. They are looking for something to bind to stabilize them. And then they will now get to your cell, bind to that, and destroy your cell. I will just talk about this one. So micronutrients. So this, what am I saying here? Many of accelerated aging or diseases are due to micronutrient deficiency. What are micronutrients? Nutrients that you need, but they are in micro level, as in they are small level that you need them, but they are very essential for normal functioning of the body. And when you are deficient in them, your body cannot heal, it cannot repair. You still need nutritional supplements, whether or not you eat whole food. I mentioned one of the reasons that we are not taking even enough because of destroying the soil microbiome and all that. And I'll just share one or two things on these micronutrients. Quickly, I want to talk about selenium. There's a man many years ago called Joel Wallach. His father was rearing animals, and then they consult veterinary doctors a lot, and they use a lot of nutritional supplements in animals. So that's how his eyes opened to that. He now studied veterinary medicine. And then he's the only man that has done almost 30,000 autopsies, both in animals and humans. That's how much he has done. And he gained a lot of experience. So while working with NIH, National Institute of Health in America, it's almost like our federal Ministry of Health in a particular institution. He now discovered something accidentally, that some monkeys that were fed and diets that were deficient in selenium, they gave birth to children. And those children or baby monkeys had what they call cystic fibrosis. I know this is a disease that affects the intestine and other organs, the lungs as well. And it's a terminal disease, a very serious disease. One, cystic fibrosis has been believed to be only found in humans and also genetic. But this man saw something very different. And so when he saw it, he now said, okay, let me prove it. After a minute, he tested. He now stabbed the mother monkeys of selenium. And then the children developed it. It was consistent. So he now took all his lab, the pathology, what they use, all the samples and all that. He now took them. He went to the guys, there's usually an officer above an officer and above an officer. He started from the small one. He said, hey, what do you think this is? He said, yeah, this is cystic fibrosis. He asked the officer to sign. He took it to the next officer, the one above that one. It's almost like local government to the state to national. He took it to the state one as a where. That one said, cystic fibrosis. He took it to the highest guy. He one said, cystic fibrosis. He said, sign. He signed. This man gathered all his materials. He now called for a presentation like this and did the presentation and wowed everybody. He got a standing ovation. After the standing ovation, he felt, wow, this is really cool. And then he now called him the next day. He should come and report. So he came, he reported. And then they now said, wow, what a presentation you did yesterday. And he was smiling. But they now told him that cystic fibrosis has been built on the fact that it's only found in humans and it's genetic. And a lot of reputation and careers have been built on that. So because of that, they cannot accommodate him. They have to let him go. Fired him. And he left. After firing him, they made sure that for 2 years, he didn't get another job. How bad? Do you know after 2.5 years, he had to go back to school to do naturopathic medicine. That's how people started hearing his voice. But fast forward, there has been a study for like 50 years relating selenium deficiency to a kind of cardiomyopathy heart disease. And it's particularly prevalent in China, in a place called Keshan. So they now call it Keshan disease. And it's due to selenium deficiency. This man and a couple of other scientists, they now work together. To God, he did a lot of pathology. He now saw a relationship between, it might not be the same disease, but the pathology is the same. And that was how they now supplemented these children that were dying. As a matter of fact, then, they were having 13 deaths every 1,000 children. Every 1,000 child, 13 deaths will happen. And do you know what happened? Within 3 to 6 months, from 13 deaths, it dropped to 1. 1 death per 1,000. You see how dramatic it was. But now, as common, a lot of politics are in healthcare. As a matter of fact, there are more politics in healthcare than in politics itself. Politics now entered and all that. But he didn't stop there. He came back to America. There's a lot of sudden death in children in America. They have over 4,000 deaths of children between 1 month and 1 year. Every year, like 4,000 deaths are recorded. And that is really, really huge. So he now came, okay, do you think this might be related? He now started researching, and he saw the relationship. He now said, okay, a lot of these things usually happen in the mothers who are deficient in selenium. And when they give birth to children, they will develop this kind of diseases. And so do you know what? It's okay. If we start supplementing the mothers, it will not correct what is in the children. Because the mother has to have breast milk, enough selenium to be able to boost that out of the child. So he now had to take FDA. In fact, he presented to FDA. FDA is like equivalent of NAFDAC in Nigeria. FDA did not listen. He now took them to court. He appealed. Do you know after that, they now had to add it to the baby food. And do you know, the thing plummeted the deaths. That sudden death in children started crashing and crashing and crashing. And you know, he still went ahead and started looking at athletes. A lot of athletes that we know, they just die suddenly. Because this thing can present in 2 ways. It can present in slow death, which is like congestive heart failure, and then sudden death. And it's discovered same thing. So the question is, do you know what of many people are falling and dying just because of a particular mineral that is just 200 naira a day? It's quite pathetic. We know a lot of footballers that do that. What if this is responsible? Nobody is saying this is what it is, but what if this is responsible? It's quite pathetic. And that is why I'm presenting this, that for some, you have children and so avoid some of these things. Selenium supplementation is you look for selenium L-methionine. That is the natural one, the one you get from food, L-methionine. Most of the one you find in the pharmacy, they don't work. And I believe that's why most people talk against nutritional supplement, that they are just making expensive urine. The truth is, there are a lot of supplements in our pharmacies. They are not good for our dogs. This is where you can read up some of these things I mentioned. These are the references. This is the book. This is The Man and the Monkey. So I'll just conclude here. Some of the omega-3 is very important for health. In fact, it's one of the most important supplements. Later, I'm going to share some supplements that we need to be taking on a daily basis for health and wellness. Vitamin D, I told you a lot of people are deficient. And one more thing about omega-3, do you know that for people who have high blood pressure, you have diabetes, maybe heart disease, omega-3 is one of the best things you can take for yourself, because around the cell membrane, what covers every cell, these are incorporated inside, and other fatty acids also. If omega-3 is just 4%, okay, let's say a group has omega-3 4%, another group has omega-3 8%, you discover that the people that have 4% have 50% chance of dying than those that have 8%. That's how important it is. This is proven by research. I will show it to you later. And I brought one of this to show you that it's not everything you take as supplement. These are some studies. And then we have NR and NMN. These are nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide. NAD, they both make NAD. NAD declines with age, and NAD is what we use to produce energy. And like I mentioned before, energy is not just to walk around and run. Sleep, you need energy. To digest food, you need energy. To heal and repair, you need energy. And they also stimulate the particular set of genes called the sirtuin genes. Those sirtuin genes are for healing and for repair. That's how important these ones are. I do use them. And then the last slide I will talk about is these polyphenols. We get most of these polyphenols from plants. These are plants that have been stressed. They've gone through certain situations and they are stressed. We know curcumin is popular. You get it from turmeric, resveratrol. I mentioned resveratrol last week when I talked about a lady that was already in her menopause, and I gave her resveratrol and a couple of supplements, and then after a few months, the menses started, because these things have been shown to reverse biological age. You have quercetin, you have lutein, you have epigenin. These are the ones I have tried personally. I have used, not necessarily taking personally. I take one or two there, giving people that want to achieve this. Well, thank you very much for today. This is how far we can go. And next week, we're going to continue. And you see how some other things that you don't even believe will accelerate your aging or cause diseases fast, or some of things that can decelerate it, or how you can decelerate it, just like we're handling each of them. Thank you.